Okay, I'm going to start to talk about the spectrophotometer readings. We use spectrophotometers to measure nutrients in the water, nitrogen and phosphorus. I'm going to start with the phosphorus test. So here is our spectrophotometer. To run either the nitrogen or the phosphorus test, you need 2 of the cuvettes. They have to be cleaned, as we talked about already. You're going to need a graduated cylinder that needs to be cleaned, as we talked about already. And you're going to need these powder pillows. These are prepackaged chemicals that the company makes. And you're going to have to use 1 or 2 of these depending on which test you're doing. You're also obviously going to need some sample water, some scissors, some Kim wipes, and depending on the test, some deionized water. So let me give you, I'm not going to go through this step by step, but let's hit some big pictures. And again, I'm now talking about phosphorus. So as the instructions clearly say, you have to turn the meter on. You have to tell it which test you're doing, which involves entering a number. So you'll do that. You have to adjust the wavelength of light that it will push through the cuvettes during the test. And so on the corner, on the end here, is a dial that allows you to adjust wavelength. Some important details. When you're adjusting the wavelength, you will have a target wavelength for this particular test. For example, it's 890 nanometers. As I spin that dial, it'll cycle through different numbers of nanometers. I always want to come from under the target and go up to it. So in other words, if I'm shooting for 890, I want to start at nanometers below 890 and then rotate up to it, stopping at 890. Don't come down from the top. And that does not say that in the instructions, so you need to pay attention to that. Another thing it doesn't say in the instructions is that each one of these glass cells has some writing on the side. Tells you, for example, here it says 25 milliliters. 2 points about that. Number one, never trust that. Those are approximate. When it tells you to put 25 milliliters in here, measure it out with the reliable graduated cylinder, then introduce it into the cuvette, these are called. Do not rely on just filling it to that 25 milliliter line. The second reason that writing is important, and the instructions don't tell you this, is later in the test you're going to have to put these things into the machine. And the part that's unstated in here is you are always going to put the writing, the 25 milliliters, off to the left. Again, the instructions don't say that, but you're going to put those off to the left. Okay, some hints about running the phosphorus test specifically. What you are going to need to do is to fill both of these with sample water. So you will need your sample, and you will need 25 milliliters in this one and 25 milliliters in that one. One of these two is going to get the chemical. And the exact order at which you do all this is here, but you make sure you understand that you're going to have 2 of these, each filled with sample, and one of them is going to get the chemical, and you need to remember which one has the chemical and which one doesn't. So, assume that I have these filled with my 25 milliliters of sample. I got to get all this chemical into one of them. First of all, there's powder inside of them, so you've really got to work a little bit to make sure all the powder's down at the bottom. You then take them and cut the top off neatly with scissors. Discard that little piece. You then have to be able to pour this chemical from the powder pillow into one of the cells. Now this cell will have sample in it already. This one happens to be empty, but it will already have liquid in it. But to do that, you pinch the 2 sides together and form a small spout. And then you can take that, and again there would be sample water in here, but it's very easy then to dump all of that chemical into the water. It then says swirl to mix, and here is what swirling actually means. Obviously, never touch this glassware with your bare hands. So I pick it up from the top. I now have chemical and my sample water in there, and I'm going to give it a relatively hard swirl. Not enough so that it sloshes over the top, just enough to get the chemical to swirl around like a snow globe, like the fake snow on a snow globe. You want it to come up, and it will settle down again. It will not all dissolve. That's okay. Just let it swirl. The instructions will tell you that then you need to let that sit for 2 minutes. You have to make sure that you have read ahead and know how to set the timer on this machine for 2 minutes. So you really want that to sit there for just 2 minutes. So you've got to practice to make sure that you're really ready to go. You follow the instructions. I'm not going to go in detail. Let's say you now have your number off of this machine. You have your data off of this machine. The last step is to clean these. And you've really got to clean them thoroughly. I've already discussed how to clean glassware, but there's an extra step with these nutrient tests. Any water that had the chemical added to it must go into a waste bin. This stuff is toxic, and we don't want to pour it down the drain. So you have one of these that has the chemicals in it. That's got to go into here. Then you take them both. This other one just had sample without the chemical, so that doesn't need to go in there. You take both of these and you clean them thoroughly. And particularly the ones with the chemical, that chemical wants to stick to the glass and will ruin it. So you really got to get in there with a test tube scrubber and clean this out really well, doing the final rinse with deionized water. And that is it for phosphorus.